As the two largest greenhouse gas polluters and the two largest economies, China and the US are central to the issue of climate change. And thus, a better understanding of public views on climate change in these two countries is of great interest. Is climate change happening, and are human actions the primary cause? How concerned are you about climate change, and what should be done to address it? The answers to these questions vary considerably in the US, but what is known about the climate change views among Chinese citizens? We surveyed over 18,000 Chinese and American citizens in 2015, 2017, and 2020 to provide analysis and comparisons of climate change views. Across these 3 years of surveys, nearly 80% of Chinese respondents said that human actions were the primary cause of climate change, compared to just under 60% of Americans. And nearly 90% of Chinese respondents said that individuals have an obligation to act to prevent climate change, compared to just over 70% of Americans. To further illustrate the differing climate change views in China and the US, we use responses to a series of questions to construct a climate change index, yielding an easily comparable metric for climate change views, with a higher score conveying more alignment with the scientific realities of climate change.
The average climate change index score in China was significantly greater than in the US for all 3 years, while there was significantly more variation among American respondents compared to the Chinese. We also see very little change in Chinese climate change views over the 3 years, while there was a large change in climate change views among Americans between 2015 and 2017, but with little change from 2017 to 2020. Underlying the variation in American views on climate change is a significant political division, with liberals scoring the highest and conservatives scoring the lowest in all 3 years. Research by the Yale Center for Climate Change Communication suggests that people around the world, and especially in the US, do not frequently talk about climate change. They also point out that talking more about climate change will be an essential step in taking meaningful and successful action. To this end, our project objectives are to continue working with our Chinese and American partners to collect data and disseminate information to both stimulate and facilitate discussion related to climate change views in these two important countries. Although our planned 2020 trip to China was canceled due to the pandemic, we are planning to return to China in 2022 to conduct more in-person research and collaborate with our Chinese faculty and student partners.
Do we have any questions for Maddie and Caleb?
Yeah, I was just curious, Maddie and Caleb, when you were looking at, did you ever get into how we talk about climate change as well, knowing that how we share information also can impact people's views on what they believe?
So a segment of our research team does look at that specifically, actually. Maddie and I aren't involved in that process super directly, but they basically have an open-ended response question. What do you think of when you think of climate change? And they end up taking that data, coding it various different ways, and they're pulling all sorts of different information about people's beliefs, their motivations, their emotional responses to climate change, whether a response is emotional or non-emotional. They found a lot of interesting data with that. Looking at how that data breaks down along political lines. So I can't give you a whole lot of specifics about that segment of our research, but it is something that we've been working on.
Great. And just a quick follow-up is, did you look at where they get their information, like through, meaning digital or television, or did you guys look at kind of how they got their information at all?
I'm not sure if we have a question regarding how, but in our survey, we do have one about media and whether or not they trust media in general. We didn't have a specify like newspaper versus digital, but we have the media broad segment.
Great, thanks.